who's actually in charge of this hotel. We met him back in Western Australia. I was doing filming there. We were doing this really cool series on rooftop gardens and restaurants. He had a really cool vegan restaurant there, which is a thing now, believe it or not, sir, that people go to. But it's an award-winning restaurant and it's beautiful. You wouldn't know it was vegan for those of you who have a slight, CrossFit. But his name is Rob Whedon, and he's made us really, really welcome from WA. And he has said that if you come along and you want to stay here and you say you're from WA, he'll make sure he looks after you. So for those of you in the room now, just say you're from Western Australia, give an address, and he'll look after you and perhaps give you an upgrade, because he gave all of us upgrades and we're really happy. All right, let us get... Now, we love a bargain here. Don't you laugh, or I'll be saying naughty things about you as you try to get up. Now, do you remember the rules of engagement? So I'll ring the bell at 10 minutes. So I'll give you a 5-minute warning. Then I'll give you a 2-minute warning, and then I'll come and stand very close to you and you will disappear off the side of the stairs. Right, Dr. Gavin Englund is our next guest up here on stage. He's the Managing Director of Narryer Metals Limited. I didn't even get the wine at lunch, did I? Did you want to have a shot at that?
Narryer.
That is correct. Well done. And that's why they pay you the big dollars.
It's better than people saying, nah, yeah.
I won't even go there. Okay. Well, you're listed in April of this year, so you're a relatively new entity, correct? But the fellow here, Dr. Gavin, is not a new entity. He's had more than 20 years' experience in mineral exploration, project development, technical advisory roles across a range of commodities. He started his career in Western Australia, moved east, and we haven't managed to get him back, but we may well do so because a couple of his projects are based in Western Australia. So think South Australia, think Western Australia, what they've been doing over the past 5 months, and what can we expect from the team over the next 12 months. Would you please put your hands together for Dr. Gavin Englund, everyone?
The usual disclaimer. So, as you know, we're not Narryer, we're Narryer. And we're a nickel copper PGE explorer in some major strategic ground holdings, both in WA and in South Australia. We have a flagship drill program at our Narryer project that's due in coming weeks. The Narryer terrain in the Gawler Craton have not only been nickel areas, but we've been lucky that rare earths have actually also followed us a little in our projects, and we have some very good discoveries in recent times, and we have very similar ground. Talking about rare earths, recently I had a nickel project put on my table, but yeah, it's quite a good nickel project. But what really stood out to me were the potential clay rare earth mineralisation. And I'll talk to you probably firstly about that, given we've just announced that yesterday. We have a pretty experienced team. We worked out the other day that all my geologists are over 50, so we're not ageist at Narryer. And we still have cash in the bank, in that we only listed in April. So the team that we've put together have done all this before. We're very lucky in that we have Richard Bevan, who's here at the moment, who's the executive chairman, so non-executive chairman, and he was the founding director of Cassini, who basically their West Musgroves project went into Oz. We have Grange Consulting looking after our corporate affairs with Phil Warren, and the projects were vended in through myself and the O'Mara family. And you might know of Dennis O'Mara, who founded Atlas Iron and De Grey. And Jane is also from that group of individuals. So we'll just start with the Rocky Gully. So this is a option agreement that we've taken on. It's a pretty soft option agreement targeting ionic clay rare earths. We think there's significant rare earths in this project. Has quite good intersections over 20 metres, up to 40 metres, over 1.5 k's of strike, and it could potentially keep going. Most importantly, that it has the magnetic rare earths, the magnet rare earths, and it's probably, in most cases, the magnet rare earths make up over 25% of the total rare earths. So as you can see there, I've just picked some intersections, 32 metres at 1,480 ppm, but look at but more importantly, being the 350 mag rare earths. And then and there's some quite nice high grade zones that you can kind of pick out. So our plan is obviously we've only just got onto this project. What we want to do is drill and look at the mineralogy and the metallurgical properties of this before we entail a resource drill. But we think if we tick the first box there, then we've got probably quite a significant rare earth project. But what I'll get onto now is our flagship project in the Narryer terrain. So the Narryer terrain, so we've got 1,800 square k's of ground. We've got mafic, ultramafic intrusives that have been previously identified, very little in the way of previous exploration. So what we're looking for is a Bollinger or a Nova Bollinger or a Bushveld Panton-Sill type mineralisation. We'll talk a little bit about that. So as soon as we listed, we flew air mag and we also flew a big EM survey. So we spent probably over $500,000 just in the first month getting our geophysics done. And that's important as a baseline to get into the nitty-gritty of the exploration. So just quickly where we are, we're up on the western edge of the Yilgarn. We're in a large igneous province. We're near big structures, and near on the western edge of where you kind of get the Julimar style mineralisation. We have mafic, ultramafics in plugs and dikes, and we also show evidence of sulphur, which you need in the country rock, so that you need to feed the sulphides. So we got good neighbours with Chalice surrounding us. We have Desert Metals and Krakatoa. So this has led to the fact that originally we were just looking at looking for nickel, but some of the recent discoveries by these two companies have really changed some of not completely changed our focus, but we're now starting to look at the rare earth potential. So Mount Narn is our main area with ultramafics, cumulate rocks, up to 0.6% nickel in rock chips. We've got some nice EM anomalies, lake time, quite deep, that we've just finished heritage survey. So tonight, last night I was in the Fullerton. Last week I was swagging it, trying to get the heritage surveys finished. We've got them done. We're hoping to drill in a few weeks. Great conductors, and yeah, so this will really test us. We've also, as we said, we've got some rare earth targets that we can kind of look at straight away, and we've got our Takaba Well PGE project. So Takaba Well is something that we've come across and identified as a large mafic ultramafic complex. And what does that mean? So think Panton-Sill, think Bushveld, think all these layered type deposits are where you find, and particularly we've found evidence of chromite layers. These are the places that are really good for finding PGE deposits. So we're going to go into there and drill some previous drill holes that have got chromite bands that have never been tested for PGEs, and some of these have got also disseminated copper in. And what we've done is we've got someone on the ground at the moment mapping out further particular targets of this style over the next few months. So rare earths, what's interesting with the rare earth story in the Narryer, that I think what we're seeing is a new frontier for ionic clay rare earths. But what we see is at Narryer is that we have some of the similar bedrock geology and probably some of the similar regolith that we might be able to harness and look at for ionic clay rare earths. So we've started with a big stream sed program. The area is perfect for stream sed programs, and those results are still pending. And we've got a couple of drill lines that we want to drill through some of these thorium anomalies which seem to be associated. So what we'll go on to now is our Sturt and Sejuna project in South Australia. Again, we're looking for these large magmatic nickel copper PGE type style deposits, but luck has kind of followed me again geologically in that the Gawler Craton, particularly where we are, they're also finding ionic clay rare earth deposits and prospects. So example being the Comet discovery by Petrotherm and some recent results put out by Indiana Resources. On the nickel front, Western Areas have identified the Gawler Craton as a significant exploration area for many years, and they're still continuing that exploration now that they're becoming IGO. So on our ground, we see evidence of nickel sulfides and quite anomalous PGEs in some of the previous drilling, but a lot of that has been inadequately tested. We also have EM anomalies that still need to be chased up from previous explorers. So just getting onto Sejuna and talking about how these kind of how the rare earth deposits in South Australia have kind of been discovered. They're all retrospect. So they've been discovered after people have been exploring for gold and then have resampled these, resampled the air core and have found that that they've got rare earths. So what I've done is taken all of 370 previously untested drill holes that are stored at the South Australian Core Library and are currently doing portable XRF followed up by proper analysis at the lab to see whether we can find something similar. This is a very cheap way of exploring quite a significant ground. So we got over 3,200 kilometres squared of prospective ground. So once we get these targets sorted, we'll move to a RAB or air core program. We'll not only follow up potentially our ionic rare earth targets, but more importantly, we want to follow up our PGE prospect at Cooper Hill, which has shown to have quite anomalous PGEs in vertical drill holes 400-500 metres spaced. We want to go in and re-drill that with incline holes. Must note also that we think there might be some uranium potential in this area. Quickly on Sturt, this project is about 30 kilometres from the Petrotherm rare earth discovery and has very similar geology, particularly these magnetic ring-like structures that you see at Comet, but you also see on our tenure. But the main reason why I picked this up was because it sits in an orthositic complex, and what is that? That's basically what hosted Voisey Bay, and we've got some EM targets that were not properly tested along the edge of this that we want to get in and test that later in probably early next year. So we've got a fairly big 6 months ahead. We've done the hard yards and doing some of the groundwork, the EM work, the magnetics. We've got people on the ground doing the sampling. We've done the heritage surveys. We're about to start our maiden drill program at our key Mount Narn EM targets and our PGE target at Takaba Well. We'll continue on with our mapping and rock chip sampling of Takaba to see what is the potential. This is a tenement that has not. Well, this particular intrusive has never been explored, and it's very unusual to find such a thing in WA. We'll continue on with our work on testing some of the Sejuna air core and RC chips from the State Library. We'll hopefully put out something fairly soon on that. We'll then go to a RAB program at the Cooper Hill and potentially these rare earth targets. And then next year we'll move on to Sturt, where we'll drill that out. The thing with our new Rocky Gully is I want to make sure that this is an ionic clay rare earth project in the instant. So what we'll do is do some metallurgical and mineralogical studies. I'm fairly positive that it is. It seems to have all the geochemical and geological characteristics of an ionic clay, but I think quite important that you work that out first and then you drill the thing out later. Okay, thanks.
I was waiting to give you the bell then, sir, and it didn't work. But now we'll have to practice saying that, Narryer, 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 100 times. Is that correct?
Yeah, just think Narryer, but just Narryer.
Where did you get the name from? What was it from?
So it's actually it's the province that we have our flagship projects in. It actually contains some of the oldest rocks in Australia and probably some of the oldest crystals in the world.
Thank you very much. We look forward to talking to you more about it afterwards. We've got drinks afterwards today, everyone, if you'd like to join us. Those of us that can will be staying. Those of us that have got to flip off to Melbourne because we lost a day in our on our road conference, as it were. So we were going to be presenting in Melbourne on Thursday, but because of the day off, we're having to move that forward to Wednesday. So we'll be here at the end. We'll be having a drink with you, but please don't think it's rude when some of us do shoot off because we've got to catch an 8 o'clock flight down to Melbourne. And it's not for the footy. It's genuinely for the next day of the conference. Right, Godolphin Resources. Godolphin Resources is next up on stage, focused on the rapidly advancing the Narrabri Rare Earth Project to become a one-stop shop for all the new green technology materials located here within the Coughlan Forward Belt in central New South Wales. Would you please make welcome the Managing Director, Ms. Jeneta Owens, who's going to provide an insight into Godolphin's rare earths, rare metals, and a rare opportunity. Please make her welcome.
Thank you, Kirsty. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today to listen to this talk. That's the usual disclaimer, and you can read it at your leisure on our website whenever you feel you need something to do for 5 minutes or so. So just a brief overview of the investment highlights. So what makes Godolphin a really good investment? Basically, we are now focused on development of critical minerals projects. So we do have projects across the green metal space. So the rare earth project is what I'm mainly going to talk about today. But we also have copper and gold projects and polymetallic deposits. I may not touch on those today just due to the time. So please come and see me at the booth and we can have a chat about those at the same time. Godolphin is a very busy company. We've got some really great geologists. So we do spend a lot of time looking at all of our projects, and we really embrace this multi-discovery strategy. So it's really about moving projects forward at multiple projects at the one time and at all different stages of the project scale. We have got active exploration programs underway. So currently we have just finished a 4-hole diamond drill program at Narrabri, which is our rare earth project. And we have permitted a further 25 holes there, which we will be mobilising a drill rig to by the end of the month, which is fantastic. Unusual for a junior explorer, but we do have 3 mineral resource estimates that have a combined total of 519 kilo ounces of gold in our inventory, which is pretty amazing. Most of that is contained within our Lewis Ponds project, which is polymetallic. It has a bunch of copper as well as zinc, all which are required within this green metal space. Now, our technical team, I've mentioned, are brilliant. We've got a great team and they all are locally based in Orange. We are a New South Wales focused exploration company. That means we can run a really lean business. We don't have huge overheads of offices or flying people in and out. We all live locally, our projects are local, and the most we have to pay is petrol, which at this point in time is quite expensive, right? We all have that pain. We are well funded. We've still got 3.87 in the bank after a small capital raise that we did just at the end of July, early August. And that was really focused on trying to get the funds to get our next stage of development for Narrabri and the Rare Earth Project. Corporate snapshot, again, I'm not going to go over this too much, but small market cap, just over 10 million at the moment, depending on what the share price is, and that's been a bit up and down. And you can see, same as a lot of other companies in the Coughlan Fold Belt, our share price has been taking a bit of a beating of late, but we don't have any debt. We're a very smooth and lean company. So why did we take on this idea of critical minerals? We obviously had great tenements in the copper and gold space, but we realized that, for developing the future of everything in technology, everything that we need for a modern technology, whether it be vehicles or power generation, requires so many more minerals and products than what we currently mine. So we know we're going to end up with a deficit of these in the near future. So how can a company like Godolphin support that? Well, it's going out and finding these projects, developing them and getting those projects out to the market. So we're talking things like batteries for the electric vehicles. We're talking, you know, windmills and also things that people don't normally think of when we're talking about the medical industry. So there's a lot of rare earths and rare metals that are used in that technology for developing medical processes or imaging technology, as well as magnets and things that you've probably heard from other explorers today. So I mentioned that we are focused in New South Wales. We have a very large tenement package. We're actually, aside from our rare earth projects, we are one of the largest in tenement size of copper and gold explorers in New South Wales. And we hold a strategic foothold in the Lachlan Fold Belt, which is very important for these types of deposits. It hosts deposits like Cadia, North Parkes, Timingli, which are large operating mines, and also the Dubbo Zirconia project, which if you were here this morning, you may have heard about that one, which is a very large rare earth project in very close to our tenements. So that's what led us to think of rare earths. The Dubbo Zirconia project is 7 kilometres from our tenement boundary. So the first step we did was to look within our own tenement package that we had existing to see if we could elevate any opportunities there. And there wasn't what we were looking for within our own package, but we did identify Narryer, which is a rare earth project that has been around for a while. It just hasn't had any love for a long time. And the main reason for that is that rare earths, that back in the early 2000s, there wasn't the appetite to what there is today. So there's a real appetite for producing rare earth elements and metals in a geopolitical stable environment. And that's what we have here in New South Wales. So this is a picture of the Narryer rare earth site. And as you can see, there's some hills in the background, which is the Narryer granite. And they actually extend under the farmland at the front, which is some sheep country, and a little bit of wheat they grow there as well. And the weathering product of the granite actually enriches the overlying weathered layers with rare earths. So from previous work that's been done, they've identified a whole bunch of mineralisation. So there's large quantities there. And we know that there's things that are really sought after, like gallium, lithium, yttrium, niobium, hafnium, all of these things that are used in these modern technologies. So we're pretty confident in our steps moving forward to develop this project. Now, I just popped this slide in to show you what it means to have a large rare earth project in New South Wales. There are 2 of them, and you can see that in New South Wales there's a green triangle and a green square. So the green triangle represents a mine that's in development, which is the Dubbo Zirconia project, and the green square is our Narryer project. This is directly off the New South Wales Department website. You can Google it yourself and find it, and it's obviously as I mentioned, our project has been identified, it's been known about, and it's actually listed in a number of government documents as a source of some of these rare earths and rare metals. Now, highly prospective geology. The Narryer rare earth project is actually very similar to the Chinese style deposits, where it's alkaline granite, and the weathered product above is where the host of the rare earths and rare metals. Now, it's also you can have light rare earths and heavy rare earths, and heavy rare earths are the ones that we're really looking for, and this is enriched in those, and as well as the metals, which is great. Now, they did define a resource back in the day, it's about 2011. It doesn't comply with modern JORC compliance. So that is our aim, is to re-drill this and move that forward. And you can see from this image, the purples and pinks are actually the highest grades in the drill holes. So this is historic drilling in the dots there. And you can see that some of those highest grades actually sit outside what they defined as the previous mineralisation. So there's a lot of opportunity to upscale and upsize this project. One of the other things that happened when they did the drilling previously was they sampled all the intervals on 4 metre composites. So that's taking 4 metres and giving it one assay result. Now, this is okay in some instances, but in this particular instance, what it potentially had the ability of doing is actually diluting your sample. So it actually, instead of having, say, 1% in 1 metre, you get 0.25% over 4 meters. So it actually dilutes your grade and can make your deposit look not so high grade. So we know that there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can actually do to improve on what's happened in the past. Now, I did mention that we have drilled 4 holes. So we finished those holes in the beginning of August this year, and we strategically placed those across the deposit so that we can, twin some of these old holes so we can get confidence in the historic drilling that it's giving the same results. And while we were doing the holes, we actually used a portable XRF machine and analysed each half metre of the core. So what that does is it gives us an indication of whether the cores that we've drilled also contain rare earths and rare metals. It doesn't give all of the rare earths and rare metals that are possible. It just gives an indication of potentially ones that it may indicate others that are there. And we had positive results, and we did put an ASX announcement out about that one. So we're hoping to have the actual assay results in about 4 weeks' time. So we'll again be putting that out to the market. So this is just what I was been speaking about, the recent drilling. So you can see the 4 holes there spaced across the program. And one thing I'd like to point out from this is actually the drilling conditions. So if you're not familiar with drilling in New South Wales, it's usually pretty good because we have crop paddocks, it's dry, it's warm, and it's quite lovely. But we've just had rain for many, many years now, and it seems like it's going to rain forever. So we had designed an air core program to come and follow up and do our resource. But it turns out after doing the diamond drilling and looking at the results that we had in the drill holes, we worked out that, hey, this isn't actually going to work. So we had to pivot and come up with another solution to actually give us a similar result and being able to drill in these really, really boggy conditions. So we have got a system, and it will be diamond drilling, and we did get those 25 drill holes approved by the department. We will be mobilising that drill rig, but it's not your average drill rig, and it's not just a drill rig. They're all on tracks. We're not using any vehicles with wheels. We're using, well, except the side-by-side. So we've got some little buggies to drive around, to drive core in and out. We've got innovative track-mounted equipment that can get into these boggy areas and collect the sump water and dispose of it. So all the things we need for drilling will come in and out via this equipment that hasn't really been used before in this part of the world. So really fantastic stuff to keep us moving forward with the project. So this is what we're looking like in the near term. So we are going to start the 1,500 metre program. That is more or less, most of the holes are around about 60 metres, and we've got 25 of them, but we will drill to bedrock and test that full profile, which again was not something done historically. We should receive the first assays from the diamond drilling we have just done in the next 4 weeks or so, and we can get those results out. Towards the end of the year, we will get the assay results from the drilling the 25 diamond holes, because we're actually going to sample that and send it off to the lab as we're going. So we're not going to wait to the end or do any of those sorts of things. We're going to be processing it pretty much as it comes out of the drill hole, out of the ground, and sending it straight off to the lab. So then we can start looking forward to our updated resource, which we anticipate to be in January, which is just slightly delayed from when we had originally decided we're going to, or where we were hoping to be with the air core program, and then we can use those core samples, for expediting the metallurgical test work. So really what's important with these rare earth projects is the products you can get out at the end. So sometimes the grade is really neither here nor there. It's about a saleable product at the end. Some of the preliminary work that's been done here says that there is the opportunity for that. They have produced saleable products. So we want to, again, reinforce that and get those results out to the market. So I actually might leave it there, Chrissy. And if you want to know about Yeovil, which is a fantastic porphyry project, come and see me at the booth. Thanks.
I like that, Jeneta. Leave them wanting more, leave them wanting more. And you have plenty of time to catch up with Jeneta as well during afternoon tea. But if you feel the need to follow her now, she is keen to have a chat with you. Iggy Tan. Do you know Iggy Tan? Yeah, a couple of nodding heads out there. He's the CEO and the Managing Director of Altech Chemicals. Now, he is considered an earlier trailblazer in the lithium industry and is now trailblazing his way in the sodium alumina solid state battery realm. Time for the Altech story.
Of the Future report. There are some real downsides to today's lithium-ion batteries, stumbling blocks that are the focus of international discussion. The batteries can overheat through thermal runaway, which can result in devastating fires and explosions. They operate best in a fairly narrow temperature range between 15 and 35 degrees Celsius. And the lifespan of lithium-ion batteries is limited to between 7 and 10 years, depending on their application. On top of that, lithium-ion battery manufacturers are at the mercy of both supply and pricing of a range of critical metals. Take lithium, for example. It's the most critical component of a lithium-ion battery, and the price has jumped sixfold since the start of this year, 2022, adding upwards pressure to production costs. Add to that, cobalt is considered the greatest material supply chain risk for the industry in the short to medium term. And whilst the Democratic Republic of Congo produces about 70% of the world's supply, human rights abuses continue to raise ethical concerns. There are also supply chain concerns around graphite and copper, which make up the anode part of the battery. The industry is heavily reliant on China because it produces 90% of all graphite anode material. Therein lies geopolitical risk. A standard electric vehicle requires 2.5 times more copper than a standard internal combustion vehicle. A recent report suggests there aren't enough copper mines being built or expanded to provide all the copper needed to produce electric vehicles into the future. But an alternative does exist. The solution is Altech Chemical's Serenergy battery, which uses sodium alumina solid state technology.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chrissy reckons that she should do the voice, though. She's much better than that. What do you reckon? So let me talk about the grid battery storage of the future. Just to explain what a lithium battery, I know everyone talks about lithium batteries, but let me explain what a lithium battery looks like. On one side of the battery, you've got the anode material, you've got a copper collector and an anode layer. On the other side is the cathode, which has got an aluminium collector, and in the middle is a liquid electrolyte. And in the middle, there is also a plastic separator that keeps the positive and negative from touching. What a lot of people don't realize is that the liquid electrolyte is flammable. It's an organic solution. The separator is also a plastic separator, which is flammable. Now, lithium-ion batteries are now heading to solid-state technology. What is solid-state technology? Essentially replacing the liquid electrolyte with a ceramic piece. So there's no liquid electrolyte and there's no plastic separator. The ceramic allows the lithium to go back and forth. That is solid-state technology. Some of the safety concerns of batteries, we heard in the news, fire and explosion for lithium-ion batteries. Thermal runaway. What is thermal runaway? Thermal runaway is when the battery gets that hot that it starts to explode. Why? Because of the liquid electrolyte is flammable, it's organic. The other thing with lithium-ion battery fires, in a normal fire, if you douse the fire and you take oxygen away from the fire, it stops. But in a lithium battery, it generates oxygen at the cathode. So it has oxygen at the cathode and it keeps generating oxygen. So it's virtually impossible to put out. Now, a lot of people don't realize that lithium-ion batteries operate in a very narrow temperature range from 15 degrees to 35 degrees. When you get to very cold climates, the electrolyte starts to be very viscous and the lithium ions tend to have problems in the transfer. So very limited narrow capacity range, and it's not really suited for very cold or desert climates. Now, I'm not against lithium batteries. They are fantastic batteries and they're not going to go away. I'm just telling you some of the issues that they have. The other issue is the lifespan of these batteries. They tend to be about 8 to 10 years. And the reason for that is the liquid electrolyte again. It tends to break down and all the side reactions that happen limit the life of the batteries. look at the price of lithium. I mean, Keith is not worried about it. The price of lithium has gone sixfold. Who's worried about that? But obviously that's causing concern for the lithium battery industry. That's causing pressure on the pricing of lithium-ion batteries. Ethical issues in the cobalt space. Not many people realize that 70% of the world cobalt comes from the Republic of Congo. And human rights abuses and child labor has caused us some ethical concerns for the industry on cobalt. As it mentioned in the video, 90% of graphite anode material comes from China. And that is a geopolitical risk. One country supplying 90% of lithium battery supply around the world. And then finally, copper. Copper is a key material, not only in the battery, but electric vehicle. 2.5 times more copper in an electric vehicle than compared to a normal vehicle. And there was a recent report that showed there's not enough copper mines being built or developed to even meet the EV forecast going forward. So what about a battery that is fireproof, has a large temperature range, double the lifespan of the lithium battery, a lithium-free, no cobalt, no graphite, and no copper. So this is our battery. This is sodium, alumina, solid-state batteries. And essentially, they consist of salt and nickel powder, and that's it. So essentially, these batteries were developed in Germany at a battery institute over the last 8 years. And these batteries have been made and undergoing test work. And as I mentioned, the key ingredient of these batteries is common salt. So our batteries don't have the organic electrolyte. It has a ceramic electrolyte, solid state. So therefore, it's not prone to fires, explosion, or thermal runaway. Because we don't have a cathode that generates oxygen, it's not a problem. In fact, it is even applicable to some areas that lithium batteries can't go into. Flooding areas, it's applicable to that. So completely fireproof and explosion proof. The temperature range of our batteries operate from -20 degrees to +60 degrees. You can see the wide range of that. Why? It's because we don't have a liquid electrolyte. It's all solid state. The inner temperature of these batteries operate at 300 degrees. It's insulated, so you can actually touch it on the outside. So think of it like a mammal. It generates its own heat, so therefore you can have it in very cold climates and very hot environments. So large temperature range. And the other thing is the life of the batteries. Sodium ions don't degrade during the charge and discharge process. And these batteries are expected to last 15 years, so nearly double the life of the battery. This is a recent study on battery performance done by a company in Canberra, and you can see all the lithium-ion batteries, and generally they degrade over the cycle life. The blue line is a SAS battery, sodium alumina solid state battery, and you can see it doesn't degrade. In fact, it actually improves over the performance. So our battery uses common salt. Sodium, in fact, is a very reactive material. If you look at the periodic table, it sits under lithium. It's an alkaline metal, very reactive, and we use that in our batteries. So it's lithium-free. It also is cobalt-free. So the chemistry is that we don't have cobalt to increase the capacity of the batteries. So that's with totally different chemistry, and we don't have cobalt. So cobalt-free. As I mentioned, we don't have an anode in our battery. No graphite, no copper. It's a self-forming anode, and I'll talk about the technology in a second. So it creates the anode when you charge it, and when it dissolves the anode when you discharge it. So we're not exposed to graphite and copper concerns. It's ideal for the grid storage market. So if you look at the performance of the battery, this is a graph that shows where the lithium ion battery. At the top right-hand side, that's where you need a lot of power. So if you want a battery for a truck or a high-performance car, you need a lot of power. If you want a battery that for grid storage, you're right in the bottom side of that. We sit in the middle, right? Our batteries take 4 to 6 hours to charge and 4 to 6 hours to discharge. Ideal for grid storage. All right, so it's very designed for the grid storage market. We believe the grid storage market is growing as fast as the EV market, nearly 28% year-on-year growth. So talking about 4 billion going up to 5 billion by 2025. And when you talk about gigawatts, it's going up to 3,000 gigawatts by 2050. Well, what's the context in Australia? Who has solar panels on their roof? A lot of people have solar panels. You're putting it back into the grid at 4 cents and you're buying it back at night at 26 cents. We need cheap energy storage. So how does the battery work? This is very exciting technology. Essentially, it's a ceramic tube. In the middle of the tube is a positive cathode. And what we do is we fill it up with salt and nickel powder, okay? This is then flooded with sodium alumina chloride, which is a medium, and it sits in a metal canister. The metal canister is actually the negative terminal. The positive terminal is in the middle. It looks a bit like this, and it sits in a canister. You put 40 of these canister together, you've got a battery. So this is the mechanism. As you charge the battery, the sodium ions move across through the ceramics and it forms this molten sodium anode. And then if you're a chemistry, the formula is sodium chloride plus nickel goes to sodium nickel chloride, sodium metal, and it forms this. So the unique part of this battery is you charge it up, the anode forms. As you discharge, the anode dissolves. So we don't actually have an anode in the battery. And when you discharge it, you can see the anode dissolving and all the sodium ions going back to form salt again. So how cool is that? Well, I know what you're saying. Well, great idea, research and development, how long are you going to take to get to commercialization? Well, essentially, we haven't done the work. It was a German institute that developed this technology over 8 years. They spent about 35 million euros in R&D. In fact, they operate a $25 million pilot plant that produce these batteries. And it's ready for commercialization. So the next question, you're probably thinking, why the hell did you get this project? Well, they were looking for a partner that had land in Germany, a partner that had some background in batteries, some background in alumina, because the ceramic is actually alumina, and some entrepreneurial spirit. So we met that criteria, and basically we did the deal. We've got 75% majority of the project, and the German institute is free carried. So this is what the pilot plant looks like. 25 million euros. They've developed the batteries. They operate these pilot plant. This is part of the batteries under test. These are 5 kilowatt batteries, but we're looking at 10 kilowatt batteries for the grid storage market. All undergoing test work, all developed in Germany. 8 years of development. We are ahead of the curve. We're there to commercialize the technology. This is some of the alumina being mixed to make the ceramic tube. This is a ceramic tube being formed. It then is calcined in a kiln at 1600 degrees. That's how they make the ceramic tube. And that's what a 10 kilowatt battery looks like. So how cool is the technology? So our project is 100 megawatts, battery plant in Saxony, Germany. What's the price of this material? For the grid storage market, you've got LFP batteries at 1,000 euros per kilowatt. We're looking at 10,000 modules at 10 kilowatts. So our vision after this is a gigawatt factory using your common salt. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Iggy. Believe it or not, that light is completely out of our control. It had nothing to do with the end, or just for our future presenters. It's nothing to do with trying to wind you up. Someone out in the banquet hall is messing around with our lights. It did actually just coincide there. It's interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. So now I just had to go and Google how to put out my blooming lithium battery fire. Thank you very much for coming. So you need a bucket of sand or a bucket of salt to put over the fire. There you go. I'm sure our next presenter will have more to say on that, because let's have a think back to what Eddie was saying at the start of the day. Remember some of the observations he made. One of them was that, I suppose his question was, what will the result be of the demand for all the new world metals that we actually need to power the EV vehicles? One thing is for sure, when you have a look at examples like Pilbara, there is a massive upside for us as investors. There's also a huge demand, not just for supply security, but also for nearness to market. And that brings us to our next presenter, European Metals, who believe the location and the potential of their next project, Cinevix, makes them perfectly poised to take advantage of the world's fastest growing market for EVs. Would you please welcome Keith Coughlan? Keith is the Executive Chairman of European Metals. Welcome, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you very much, Chrissy. Yes, we are involved in developing the largest hard rock lithium resource in Europe, the Cinevix Project. We acquired this project way back in February of 2014. So we've been at this for some time, and the macro has changed dramatically for us, for the better, I might say. And the most recent significant change came about only last week, which I'll touch on in a moment. But so I've been coming to these sort of conferences for some time now and talking to people about battery metals, specifically lithium, electric vehicles and what have you. And it's fair to say that we all got it horribly wrong all those years ago. The world has consistently underestimated what the demand for electric vehicles would be, for batteries and therefore for lithium. And we've also got wrong, or the world's got wrong, what the supply side would be. And it's always overestimated future supply and underestimated future demand. And that's why we're at the stage we're at right now with the supply-demand equation for lithium. More on that after our speed reading exercise. So the Cinevix project, as I said, largest hard rock lithium resource in Europe. There's a couple of distinctions I'd like to point out against some of the lithium projects or lithium stocks that you might otherwise know. So we think in this part of the world, we think mainly about spodumene when we think about lithium, and spodumene, selling spodumene concentrate generally to China for further processing. Our project is a fully integrated project. That is, we're going all the way through to producing the battery grade chemicals ourselves, primarily lithium carbonate and lithium hydroxide. So we're not selling a concentrate, we're going all the way through. It is a very large resource, as I've mentioned. That's important for a couple of reasons. So the European Union is now fully committed to the green energy deal, to building batteries, building electric vehicles, etc. Having the largest conventional deposit in that part of the world is significant because it helps the EU focus on helping us getting our project into production. The economics of the project were last updated in January of this year. The world's changed a fair bit since January, but in January, the after-tax NPV of the project was almost $2 billion US, and the IRR, again, after tax of over 36%. I'd just like to point out that our share of that NPV is about 10 times what our current market capitalization is. So I'm suggesting that we might get a re-rating sometime soon. We've got some very strong partners in the project with us, which is very important. Our project level partner is ČEZ, the Czech National Power Utility, who are a publicly listed company with a market capitalization of about 22 billion euros, and they're 70% owned by the Czech government. So we think we've got the government, the permitting and political situation under control with regards to our partners. The EIT on the screen there, the EIT is a formal European Union body, chief facilitator of the European Battery Alliance. That too helps us a lot in developing this project in the Czech Republic. The project's fully funded through to final investment decision. We don't need to raise any money until then. And the project also has very, very strong ESG credentials, which I'm sure you're all aware is becoming more and more important. So I mentioned the EU being fully committed to this thematic. As you can see there, a commitment of €1 trillion to the green energy deal, which is largely about building a battery industry from scratch and the full adoption of electric vehicles throughout Europe. And that's a reality. That is happening. Now, I mentioned a bit of good news that came through just late last week, and that is that now the EU has finally woken up to the fact that it needs to wrap up some security of raw materials around this thematic. And just last week, the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, announced the Critical Raw Materials Act within the EU. So legislation to enhance the development of projects like ours within the region. This is excellent news for us. This is why the EU is so focused on this industry. These are the numbers for the sales of electric vehicles across 3 key European markets in July, a couple of months ago. So roughly 50% of all vehicles sold across these 3 markets in July were some form of electric vehicle, and that number continues to rise. Now, we can be forgiven living in Australia for not fully appreciating the uptake of electric vehicles across the globe, because Australia sadly will be a slow adopter to the electric vehicle transition. And that's largely because of distances and rolling out infrastructure and what have you. But these are not factors in Europe, where densely populated area, people don't drive the sort of distances we do in Australia. And so the take-up of electric vehicles just keeps going up. In fact, I've taken that slide out. In Norway, the number for that month was 83% of all vehicles sold in Norway in July were some form of electric vehicle. This chart shows you, so on the left-hand side, these are the size and owners of the battery factories currently in operation in Europe. And on the right-hand side, it's a very, very different story by 2030. It's the automakers who will dominate and the Chinese battery makers. But also clearly there's a lot of demand coming out of Europe if you measure it in terms of gigawatt hour capacity in the battery factories being built or in advanced planning. Another chart just on the supply demand equation for lithium. I think I can probably take this chart out now. I think everyone appreciates that the metal is in deficit and will remain in deficit for some time. Cinevix, I've mentioned more than once how big it is. So this gives you some idea. If you take all of the hard rock lithium deposits in the EU, we represent over 65% of the total. Important for long-term security of supply, but also important, as I said, in focusing the EU's attention on our project and helping us get it into production. The gold star in the middle of this map is where the project is in the Czech Republic on the border with Germany. Cinevix is a historic underground tin mine. Tin's been produced here on and off for over 600 years. I'll come back to the tin side of it shortly. But if you added up the capacity of all of the battery factories on this chart, they would require more than the total amount of lithium produced in the world last year. In fact, about 25% more than the total amount of lithium produced in the world last year. Enormous demand, but there's no supply. There's no lithium produced in Europe whatsoever as we stand here today. Historic project, all the infrastructure, whatever is in place. And I mentioned also in the opening slide, very strong ESG credentials. There are a number of factors to that, but just to begin with, re-entering a historic underground mine clearly is a lot easier from an ESG point of view, from a social point of view, than breaking new ground, than starting a new mine in an area such as Europe that's highly densely populated. With regards to the ESG, we had a study commissioned late last year by a company called Minviro, independent consultants in this area, what they call an LCA, a life cycle assessment. This is a relatively new industry, and the terms that they use change from time to time. So they talk about global warming potential, you see there, what we used to call your carbon footprint or your CO2 footprint. So they measured Cinevix on this, on global warming potential 2 ways. Firstly, the base case. So this is a historic coal mining area, and obviously we're moving away from coal mining. The base case on the left there is if we had to burn brown coal to fire the plant, But in actual fact, we already have commitment from CHES, our partner, who's the Czech power utility, to provide solar energy to the plant. And the difference between just burning coal and going to green energy, you can see reflected in the global warming potential here. Lower than most other lithium projects in operation now. And there are other initiatives we're working on to get that lower still. Strategic partnerships I already mentioned. So CHES, very large company, a history of mining coal, burning coal to generate electricity. They've been moving away from that for some time, as is the region, as is the world. They now have significant green energy assets, wind farms, solar, and what have you. And as I mentioned, they already have enough solar capacity to power our plant going forward. On the numbers, so the update from January, which is a little dated now, we used $17,000 a tonne for lithium hydroxide way back in January, and I think today it's closer to 80,000 a tonne. So clearly that's going to have some significant impact on these numbers. The other thing to note from this chart is that this model, 25 years at roughly 30,000 tonnes per annum of production, uses only about 13% of the overall resource. It's a very, very big lithium deposit. So we are looking at ways that we might expand our production and produce more going forward. Last slide, just quickly. So what can we look forward to as shareholders? We've had a period of an absence of news flow. I understand that, and that's probably reflected in our share price. I think that as we get into the last quarter of this year, we'll see some significant change to that. Reportings on the studies that are undergoing at the moment, the FEED study and the DFS, and advancing discussions with both government, EU, and then with off-takers and financiers. Thanks very much for your time. We are developing the largest hard rock lithium deposit in a region in which the demand for lithium will grow quicker than anywhere else in the world. If you would like any further information on that, please come and see me after. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Keith. We're staying with the rare earths world, and Peak Rare Earths believe they are well positioned to become a leading supplier of rare earth products. This is their Chief Executive Officer. His name is Bardin Davis, and he's here to share the Peak story. And I'm going to let you pronounce the name of the start. Go on, just once for me.
Nagwala.
Yeah, brilliant, perfect. In Tanzania, so about 1,000 kilometres from the capital there. Looks beautiful. It actually looks like a really beautiful site.
Yes, no, absolutely. So good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So if I can get this working. Here we go. Draw your attention to our disclaimer. So Peak is a rare earth development company, so very much aligned to thematics around the rise of electric vehicles and renewable energy. We're Perth headquartered. Market cap at the moment of around 115 mil, predominantly focused on the development of Nagwala, which is one of the world's largest and highest grade undeveloped NdPr projects. As part of a staged development approach, as recently announced to the market, we're going to initially focus on the development of the Nagwala project, produce a high-grade concentrate, which we will ship to third-party refiners. And then in line with our framework agreement negotiation, which we're progressing with the government of Tanzania, we'll commission an independent technical study that will look into the technical, economic and environmental feasibility of an in-country refinery in Tanzania. And so depending on the outcome of that study, we'll either progress further downstream in Tanzania or at our site in Teesside in the northeast of England. So in terms of key investment highlights, we've obviously heard a lot about the thematics around rare earths, very much being driven by the rapid growth in electric vehicles and direct drive wind turbines, obviously leading to rising prices and growing market deficits. Tanzania, an established mining jurisdiction and rapidly improving under the current president, Samia Suluhu Hassan. World-class asset, Nagwala, high grade, very low levels of radionuclides, so very low levels of uranium and thorium, plus 20-year life of mine with substantial exploration and development upside. As I announced, we're adopting a sequenced approach to development. It enables us to materially reduce our CapEx and upfront funding costs, as well as reducing technical and commissioning risks around that previous integrated strategy. A strong, well-rounded board and management team in place. Importantly, we've also got a very experienced senior on the ground team in Tanzania. Finally, we have a very strong relationship, a lot of support in the Ngwala community, and are very much committed to best practice from an ESG perspective. So we've obviously heard a lot today around the thematics for rare earths and battery materials. So I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on these slides. I think the key point on this slide is really around growing global commitment around decarbonisation and emission targets, and in particular, the strong government spending that we're seeing directed to both renewable energy and electric vehicles. In the case of electric vehicles, it's not obviously what the governments are doing, it's also what the global auto brands are doing. And so we now have a situation where we have the likes of Jaguar, Volvo, Fiat, Mercedes and BMW all committing to a complete phase out of internal combustion engines by 2030. And then we get to 2035 and we've got General Motors also committing to a complete phase out. Next slide. All we're trying to do here is show the nexus between our key element in our concentrate, which will be NdPr, and how that's used in high-strength permanent magnets, which are ultimately deployed in electric vehicles and direct drive wind turbines. So approximately 96% of the value of Ngwala's concentrate will be attributable to contained NdPr. So what we've done here is we've captured the outlook by Adamas, a well-regarded rare earth and critical minerals research house. So they're projecting the market deficit for NdPr oxide to reach around 70,000 tonnes by 2035. So to put that in context, that's equivalent to the contained NdPr of 20 of our Ngwala projects. On the right-hand side, that blob that you can see, that encapsulates the low base and high case pricing scenarios by Adamas. You get out to 2035, Adamas are calling prices at $247 a kilo in real US dollar terms. So turning to Tanzania, a very well-established mining jurisdiction, already the 4th largest gold producer on the continent. But importantly, the country is blessed with major endowments of rare earths, as well as other critical minerals such as graphite, copper and nickel. Under the current president, Her Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan, we're seeing a lot more focus now on driving growth in that sector, securing foreign investment and approving multiple mining licenses and framework agreements. So in terms of our history in Tanzania, goes back to 2008. To date, we've spent about $45 million on a combination of exploration, technical studies, and community initiatives. We've recently established a Tanzanian head office in Dodoma, which is the capital, and put in place a senior Tanzanian team, which includes the likes of the Honourable Abdullah Mwinyi, a very accomplished Tanzanian national, provides us with a Tanzanian perspective and voice in all decision-making at a peak board level, and also comes from a very well-connected political family. Our country manager, Ismail Dewani, had been with the project for 7 years. We're also able to draw a lot of support from our senior country advisor, Patrick Rutabanzibwa. Patrick has about 30 years of experience at a senior level in the Tanzanian bureaucracy and is very helpful as we navigate and deal with the Tanzanian government. So as I mentioned before, Ngualla, absolutely world-class, plus 20-year life of mine supported by JORC compliant ore reserves. Importantly, those ore reserves account for less than 20% of the resource base. So that means significant scope for future mining expansions and extensions. The reserves that we have in place are focused on a weathered bastnasite form of mineralization that is low in both radionuclides, so very low levels of uranium and thorium, as well as acid-consuming elements. So the advantage that we have is we don't have some of the same environmental and logistical constraints that some of our peer projects have, where they have much higher levels of thorium and uranium. Also, the benefit of having very low levels of acid-consuming elements is that it makes our concentrate much more attractive. It requires a lot less acid or reagents to refine and separate that concentrate. From a mining perspective, strip ratio below 1.8 times. Minimal requirement for blasting, predominantly a free dig. So from a production perspective, we're targeting just under 40,000 tonnes per annum of a high-grade 45% grade concentrate. Key points of attraction for that concentrate are its high grade, low levels of radionuclides, and it also benefits from a high NdPr ratio. Okay. So in the past, we had contemplated an integrated development entailing moving forward with Ngualla in Tanzania, as well as a rare earth refinery in Teesside in the northeast of the UK. In line with the framework and agreement negotiations that we're progressing with the government, we've committed to move forward initially with Ngualla, and Ngualla will export a high-grade concentrate for export. And then we're going to defer any decision on the location of a rare earth refinery and further downstream processing until the completion of an independent study that we will jointly conduct with the government that will look into the technical, economic and environmental feasibility of a Tanzanian refinery. So some of the key benefits of that approach is that it enables us to retain some optionality around the location of the refinery, as well as further downstream processing. It's going to materially reduce our upfront capex and funding costs. It's going to enable us to reduce our commissioning and technical risk. And it also enables us to capitalise on the growing appetite that we're seeing at the moment for high-grade concentrate that also has very low levels of radionuclides. So from a Tanzanian regulatory perspective, we're very close to finalising outstanding approvals. Our SML application was approved by the Tanzanian Cabinet in July of last year, and we're in final discussions with the government on a framework agreement. You can see from the chart on the left-hand side, our special mining licence area is approximately 18 square kilometres. And you can also see that as part of our framework agreement, the government will be entitled to a 16% free carried interest. We like that concept. We like that alignment of interests. If the project does well, we want to ensure that the government is benefiting from that as well. And so whilst the initial focus at Ngualla is on the weathered bastnasite mineralisation that forms the basis of our ore reserves, we've got a number of interesting long-term growth opportunities. So the first of those opportunities is around exploiting a really interesting zone of monazite within the deposit. We think that has the potential to support the production of a separate monazite concentrate, so in addition to our bastnasite concentrate. We believe there's potential to exploit some heavy rare earths in the northeast of the deposit. We've had some very interesting intersections. We want to do more work on that. We've got the option of going further downstream in country, and that could entail a refinery, but it could also entail producing an intermediate mixed rare earth carbonate. We also see some interesting opportunities around developing other commodities in the deposit, which include fluorspar, niobium and phosphate. So in relation to ESG, On the environmental front, our ESIA undertaken to a World Bank standard. We're also incorporating a hybrid solar battery component to our power solution. This project will generate significant employment opportunities and provide a significant revenue stream to the government. So during construction, we'll deliver 800 direct jobs, in excess of 3,000 indirect jobs during operations, 225 direct jobs for Tanzanians and another 1,000 indirect jobs. We benefit, as I said earlier, from a very supportive, very strong relationship with the Ngwala community, which number about 12,000. We support that relationship with significant resourcing in our team, but also by supporting initiatives like construction of classrooms, teachers' houses. We put a lot of funding into water sources, water bores, medical clinics, sporting events, and major cultural initiatives. Earlier this year, we also commissioned repairs and works to a 45-kilometre stretch of road that links Ngwala to the Kaninga township. Very helpful for our project, but it has changed lives in the community. So now the community has access to an all-year safe access road. It's enabled the commencement of bus services, truck services to site. The government now is laying poles and wires along that road and going to connect the community to the power grid. And we've also seen that the agricultural sector can now achieve much higher pricing for its products. Key point here is that we are very positively distinguished from our peers on the basis of our grade, the size of our resource, low levels of radionuclides, but continue to trade at a very substantial discount to our peers, both on a resource multiple and a reserve multiple, notwithstanding that a number of our peers do not have reserves in place. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Bardin. Bardin Davies. Right, Krakatoa Resources, next up on stage, an emerging future metals exploration company with recent discoveries at its Montclair project in WA. To tell us about the company and the potential, the opportunity for yourselves, please welcome Krakatoa Resources CEO, Mr. Mark Major. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Okay, welcome. Thanks everybody for turning up. I won't bore you too long, so hopefully everybody can get the picture of what Krakatoa is. This is our first time in Sydney for a long time, so we've actually got a lot of news to get through, and I'll try to get through as fast as I can today. Time started. Disclaimer, I won't be reading that. Okay, company overview. Why Krakatoa? Okay, Krakatoa is just not a one-trick pony. You know, we're not just rare earth focused. We've actually got rare earth, specialty metals, plus nickel potential there as well. We've got copper and we've also got gold. Now, that's a lot, obviously, but our focus is obviously in this new metal space. So, look, the growth potential on rare earths is huge. We all know that. We know the specialty metals is huge as well with the emerging markets. And obviously, all our projects are located in Australia. Again, safe jurisdictions, easy for us. We've been undergoing very strategic, I guess, aggressive exploration recently, and obviously been focusing all those efforts into certain areas, and I'll get through those as we go through this. Another key criteria here is all our projects are 100% owned. Okay, snapshot of Krakatoa. Look, we've got 345 million shares on issue, market cap circa around 20 mil. We've got a 4.2 in the bank. It's probably closer to 3.5 now. We are doing exploration, obviously. You can see our daily or our moving price over the last few years, and that's fluctuated. We recently had a discovery before the market started to go bye-bye again. And, we intend to keep adding on value to our shareholder base there. So right now, if you look at this, you're sort of looking at the lowers, and we're probably moving up towards those highs again. Our executive team, our board, Colin Locke, David Palumbo, and Tim, they're all in the financial service sector, principally. and then myself as the geo, sort of as a technical guy behind it, with over 20 odd years. Yeah, grey hair gives it away. But our projects here, the projects I'm going to concentrate on today are only going to be the Mount Clair and King Tamba projects. Within Mount Clair, we've got a few anomalies or a few targets, and King Tamba as well. They're both in WA. The rest of the stuff, if you want to know about it, come and see us. Look on our website. It's all there. So critical metals, we all know what it's all about. Rare earths, we know why we're all here today, looking at these in the future. I'm just going to skim through these slides because you've seen them a few times in different versions throughout the day. So what we've got here is Mount Clair, which we'll get the later. You can see our Mount Clair, basically rare earths, nickel, copper, and also the potential for copper, tantalum, and rubidium and zircon as well. Dalgaranga is actually now called King Tamba. Dalgaranga is a gold mine in the area and everybody gets us confused. And then Rand is obviously a project that we have here in New South Wales. So we cover all those emerging metals, the demand cycle. So I guess where we are right now, we've completed resource drilling at Mount Clair, okay, over our Tower prospect, which we've actually identified our rare earths. Now, these are clay-hosted rare earths. We've undertaken our initial metallurgical rare earth reporting. That's still ongoing. We are looking to have a maiden resource on this Tower prospect by the end of this year. We'll then obviously undertake our second phase of metallurgical processing. But also within the Tower area, we've identified other zones where we need to step out and look at as well, and we'll be undertaking that in the next quarter. We also have identified basement sulfide potential. We're assuming it's nickel copper, maybe PGEs as well, EM conductors, all the plumbing's there, the geology all supports it. And obviously we'll be drilling that before the year is out. King Tamba, now this is a lithium, tantalum, rubidium, pegmatite. It's not spodumene. It's basically next to Mount Magnet area. Again, we've drilled this recently. We're about to bring out a maiden resource on this. And then obviously we'll be doing test work on the metallurgy, and I'll talk to you a bit more specific about that in a minute. That's what the timeline looks like over the course of the next 2 quarters. It's a pretty busy time for us. Everything sort of just bunched in together. Although drilling has come, the labs have delayed, so the resources are being pushed back. But we'll be there by Christmas. Hopefully we'll have early Christmas presents coming down. So to get on to the part that I really wanted to discuss, and I guess it's to give you an idea of what the projects are and how we're finding these things and what we're actually doing. You know, rather than me just telling you this stuff, it's actually proof is in the pudding here. At Mount Clair, we've got over 2,300 square kilometres of tenure. Look, we've probably explored maybe 150 square Ks of that realistically, okay? We've been there since 2019. We pegged it. By the time 2020 came around, that's when we were actually allowed to get on the ground and actually start real exploration. But what we've been able to do there in that period of time is obviously we've identified large sulfides or late time EM conductors, which we believe are the base bones of these sulfides. We've also do know that there are heavy mineral sands in the area. This area was explored previously by BHP, and they were looking for diamonds. So they were doing a lot of work on their streams. And that was part of the reason that we went in there, because they did identify large amounts of monazite, or abundant as they called it. And obviously we've got a lot of rare earth potential there as well. Now we believe we do have a hard rock rare earth potential as well as clays. You know, we're yet to prove the hard rock side. We're still out there. So look, there's a lot of opportunity, I guess, on this project. Some of the science behind it, I guess, is where we go now. In April, we discovered the thick clay regoliths, which hosts all the rare earths. Now, these are a little bit different to a lot of other companies that are here. Our actual clay regolith is actually in situ. It is actually been hasn't been deposited there. It's a process of the weathering of the bedrock. Okay, so this is in situ. It stays there. It's been weathered. So we've defined an exploration target over that. And you'll see those green dots on the map over here. They're our discovery holes. Okay, again, very large, thick, consistent, comparable rare earth oxide total values to the same as our peers that are in this cycle. And again, we've uncovered our metallurgical processing. We're moving that forward. What we've recently done is we've drilled out all these red holes. They're the ones that are going to get us into this resource. Yeah, we're looking probably at a resource between in the order of obviously greater than 100 million tonnes, but probably less than 500 million tonnes because we didn't drill the whole area. So the upside, just to give this a bit of context, this is probably 2/3 of the area that we have there at Mount Clare. And where we're talking with Tower is this little zone here, just this small area right here where the pointer is now. So that's where our exploration target is. That's where we're doing our resource. Now, the reason we drilled there is because there's a bush track there. We could get a drill rig in. Okay, we've got massive area over here, which has been identified as well, okay, to be hosting a lot of regolith rare earths. So all these dots on this map correspond to a rare earth. Okay, and they're all associated with stream sediment sampling. And a lot of that was done by BHP in the initial days. So these blue dots over here are abundant BHP one. But none of this area has really been explored. And what we've been able to do is, I guess, identify areas of interest initially. And now we've just got to prove it. Well, we've proved what we've thought was there. We've identified these rare earths were in the clays. And now we've got to go to the next step, solve the metallurgical issues, go through that, and let's push it on and get this thing into production. So how does this look, I guess, compared to our peers? And when I talk about peers, I'm talking about companies that are actually going into production on rare earths, okay, these clay-hosted rare earths. So what we've got is IXR. What we've got here is, we want that one, that's a Clara, okay, Hochschild-based, and then Sierra Verde, which is the other one, okay? That one's in Chile, that one's in Uganda, and that one's in Brazil. So a bit of diversity between them. All those colors there, all these colors represent payable rare earths. Okay, they're the rare earths elements that are actually payable at this stage. Okay, so you look at us, we've got the same backbones as IXR and Aclara. What does that mean? That means it's basically coming from the same situation. It's a monazite-based rare earth host. Okay, they're all payable. These market caps of these companies, okay, that's about 170 mil, and that's about 100 mil. And their resources, they've got resources, they're a bit more advanced than us, but that's where we look to be very soon. But on top of that, and I guess another string to our bow, is these nickel sulfide, potential sulfide basements, deposits that we've identified. We've got multiple conductors out there, which we completed a VTEM survey over earlier in, or late last year, earlier this year. We followed a lot of those targets up, and now we've got some actually moving loop targets down on the southern cluster. And some of these targets are actually, 6 of the conductors are over 8,000 Siemens, which is quite a good number to have when you're looking for this. What's also good at these is they're late time, but they also are on magnetic lineaments, okay, which would interpret structural orientations. So we've got a lot of pathfinder elements within the streams and in the soils there as well. We've got high chromium, which obviously we believe is adding to that PGE side of it. But until we drill it, we don't know. Currently, we're out there doing a heritage survey. We hope to be drilling before the end of the year. This gives you a bit of a snapshot of what I guess, you have a look at what Chalice has been able to do with their EM conductor. That's the picture of Chalice's EM conductor at the top there. This is all to scale. Okay, this is a Nova one from Suri Resources back in Nova Bollinger when they first discovered that. This is our conductors here of one of our targets. Oh, okay. This is another conductor here. And these are our magnetics down here. So what we're really excited about is actually get in here and actually drill these plates out before the end of the year. I'm running out of time, but so I want to get into King Tamba. So look, King Tamba is an LCT pegmatite swarm. This used to be mined by Tantalum Australia for tantalum, obviously. Now, what we've been able to do here is identify that there's a lot of other mineral assemblages that are more important these days within this deposit. And we've actually recently drilled this out, and we're going to have a mineral resource on this before the end of the year again. One interesting fact here, I guess a lot of people in this room have probably never heard of rubidium. Okay, rubidium is one of those metals that sort of goes under the radar. It's not used a lot, but as technology advances, and just some, rubidium carbonate right now, 1 kilo of rubidium carbonate is $1,000 US. Okay, so it puts you into perspective of where we sit. What is also, I guess, what is it used for? Okay, you want to increase your efficiency of any photovoltaic solar panel or anything with glass associated, then 20% by using a little bit of rubidium, you actually increase it by 20%. And as the previous speakers have mentioned, with these new sodium-ion batteries, they are 60% cheaper. They're better performance. They also need rubidium in that. So that's a market to be watching, and I'll put the last slide up just to show you a bit of what we're sort of looking at here. This is our exploration target. There's no doubt we'll overdo that with our recent coverage, but we've also got over here, rubidium market. There's some breakdown there of what it's used for, and it's actually going to be a bit bigger. And I think I'm out of time now, so I'll move on. And look, if you want any more detailed information or a bit more knowledge about these things, come and see us at the booth. We're there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark Major. Looks like you've got just about everything covered there as far as future-proofing the company for investments. I like it. Well done. Greg Miles is joining us on stage. This is Caspin Resources, has enjoyed recent success at its Yarrawinda Brook PGE nickel and copper project, which is north of Perth over in WA. They've actually now opened a second exploration front. That's at the Mount Squires Gold, Nickel and Copper project, which is in West Musgrave. I tried to entice this man with some of my chocolate-coated M&Ms that I'm sitting up the back eating. I'm walking up the back, getting a different picture, and he's too intent on his focusing on what he has to say. So it's one heck of a lot to say to us. Would you please welcome Caspin CEO, Mr. Greg Miles, everyone.
Thanks, Chrissy, and welcome everybody, and thanks for getting an update on the Caspin story here today. So yes, Chrissy, we have opened up a second front, but I guess we've had quite a lot of exciting news across both projects. First and foremost on our Yarrawinda project, which we'll concentrate mostly on today. Firstly, though, a corporate overview. Not much has changed here from when I last spoke at this in Sydney, which back in May. The board has stayed the same, shareholders have stayed the same. A little bit of a spike in our share price last week, and we'll go into some details around that today. So, in a word, flying. That's what I came up with to summarise where Caspin's at the moment, both figuratively and literally. As you can see, we're flying an airborne EM survey there, but the reason for that is basically on this avalanche of fantastic new results we've had in recent months, primarily about our Yarrawinda Brook project. The results that we've had recently at Serradella have been an absolute breakthrough for the company and for the project, and we'll go into some more details from that. But it's not the only thing. We do have a number of other targets in our portfolio there, and which has generated quite a large sort of pipeline of prospects that'll keep us very busy for the immediate future. But also our Mount Squires project, which is something that until recently we haven't been able to get on the ground. Mount Squires was a bit of a COVID casualty over the last couple of years, and border restrictions in Western Australia prevented us from doing too much work. And so not only have we got out on the ground in recent months, but we've also started to generate some really interesting results from that as well. So let's just turn to the Yarrawinda Brook project. Sorry, let's just focus on that for a second. Just outside of Perth. So, you know, most people know this part of the world because of the Chalice story. It's a great story, one of the great discoveries in recent years in Australia. Just on the doorstep of Perth, we're about 100 kilometres out of Perth. It takes me about an hour and 15 minutes to get from my doorstep onto the doorstep of the project, which I'm told by one of the investors here today was longer than it takes him to get into this conference. So blessed with fantastic infrastructure, highway pretty much direct to our door, power, water, everything you would want for a mine development. And most importantly, the right rocks. You know, you can build infrastructure, but you can't build geology. And you know, we have the advantage here of being one of the first movers in the region and have obviously benefited from Chalice's success, but now we're generating some success in our own right as well. And that's really about Serradella. Serradella prospect. This was not even a concept 12 months ago, a mere idea about what might represent a good target. We start off testing an airborne EM anomaly. It had a coincident mag anomaly, which is the basis for that figure on the right. There was some historical drilling that had been through there in the past. It goes back to the 70s and 80s, but nobody had really explored this area seriously for PGEs. And you know, we'd been working at Yarrawinda and the Yarra Brook intrusion for 12 months prior, and we knew that we're in the right part of the world, just hadn't found the sweet spot. Yark 36 there is a result that we put out at the end of July, and that is a critical moment for our company. That's a breakthrough intercept, 17 metres at a bit over 2 grams 4E. Now, what does that mean? That is platinum, palladium, gold, and rhodium. Now, we'll talk about rhodium separately in a minute, but platinum, palladium, and gold are usually the sort of metals that we talk about in the PGE space. And there's nickel and copper associated with this as well. And Yark 36 is supported by a couple of other holes, 25 and our original discovery hole 22. Now you'll see that some of these intercepts are reported as 3E and 4E, and that's because we need to do a separate analysis for rhodium, which we're going through, but it takes additional time. Now, just for context, because I find that I do have to educate people about, you know, what's a good PGE grade. I've put there Chalice's global resource grades and high grade core, because that's Chalice forms a pretty good reference point. And you can see that those drill intercepts sit comfortably within Chalice's resource model. So that gives us a lot of confidence going into the future that this is a real discovery. So what is it about rhodium that gets my blood pumping? Well, it's primarily about value. So rhodium is exceptionally rare. It's probably rarer than the rarest of rare earths that we've been talking about ad nauseum today. Approximately 10 times gold price. That's a simple way of thinking about it. And so you don't need very much to make a significant difference to the value proposition of your drill intercept. And so the grades that we reported last week, with the core of which 3 meters at 0.56 grams per tonne rhodium, I think, and I'm yet to be proven wrong, I think that is the highest grade rhodium intercept ever reported in Australia. So it differentiates us from all the other PGE prospects and developers that could really make a difference to our project. What is it used for? Pretty much the same sort of, it's got similar properties to platinum and palladium, but is even more adept at dealing with highly corrosive, high temperature, high pressure kind of environments. And as I learnt the other day, it's occasionally used in jewelry as well. So it's a fantastic discovery to find. It does mean that we do need to do an alternative assay technique. Extends the period of time for us reporting assays, unfortunately, but it's worth the wait. And so this is what Serradella looks like in cross-section. In hindsight, it was probably pretty obvious that we had something of interest here. Some of the higher grade, some of the earlier drilling had reported platinum and palladium in the near surface. That drilling was just quite shallow, didn't actually penetrate much past the weathering zone. We had drilled a hole 18 in this area previously, but it had been drilled partly through a dolerite dike, which sort of offsets mineralisation. So we weren't necessarily confident that this area was going to show any kind of continuity of mineralisation. But hole 36 proved us completely wrong. Easily the best intercept so far, multiple horizons of mineralisation. And I guess one of the other sort of learnings from hole 36, well, it was that it demonstrated that hole 39, one of our subsequent holes, hadn't actually drilled deep enough. So the way we've approached exploration at Cerridella is to do quite large step outs across this very large anomaly. So that anomaly that I showed earlier is about 1.2 kilometres long, probably something similar sort of down plunge, down dip. So a very broad area that we're trying to cover that area with as little drilling as possible, but in the process also learning a little bit about our geology. Our hole 39 clearly didn't go deep enough to hit that same zone reported in hole 36. 39 will be the first hole we get back to when we start drilling again. But it's not the only target. So we want to close the spacing around that hole 36 and some of our other better holes there. 200 metres is way too broad for defining a resource or even trying to prove continuity of mineralisation. But our other target is actually still more or less of a concept. Through a lot of sort of good geological work of our team, we've understood that the intrusion is overturned. Now, for those that are familiar, the basal contact of these intrusions is usually where sulfides accumulate, and it's usually a good place to explore. Now, what we've been able to learn is that basal contact is actually further to the northeast of our of where we're currently drilling, and the deepest holes or the furthest holes we've got in that direction are also our thickest zones of mineralisation. So holes 40 to 42 there, you know, averaging about 100 metres worth of mineralisation at half a gram. Now, half a gram is pretty modest, but I think what we've seen in some of these other PGE prospects is you can have quite large changes in mineralisation tenor over very short distances. And what we're hoping is that as we step closer to that basal contact, greater sulfide accumulation towards that contact. And what we're hoping for is an improvement in grade as we get closer and closer. So that's our second target. We'll be working on two fronts here at Cerridella. So the field season's coming up. It's actually, we're working in agricultural farmland, as you can see from the photo there. Now is not the time to be sort of drilling in paddocks around Perth. But we will be starting drilling again towards the end of October. And we'll start off with a diamond rig and then bring in a RC rig some point during November. And that'll keep us busy pretty much all through the summer season, through Christmas, short break for Christmas, and then right through to probably end of April. Cerridella is going to be the main focus, but we do have other targets. And we've got some interesting sort of anomalies, EM anomalies, soil anomalies on what we call the Brassica shear zone, which is an interesting sort of extension of the same belt of rocks leading up from Julimar. And that's the geophysical image to prove that. So there's still enormous potential outside this, our main prospect area. We've got a pipeline of prospects throughout the project that we're continuing to work up. So what are we doing in the meantime, though? We can't wait till October. In the meantime, though, we've been fortunate enough to work up our Mount Squires project. Now, this is out in the desert area of West Australia. Similar sort of geological target in a different terrain. And in fact, this is almost two projects in one. You could draw a line down the middle of it. One half is sort of a copper gold kind of style of mineralisation, and the other is really an extension of the nickel copper mineralisation of the West Musgrave project, which is operated by Oz Minerals. Now, some people might be familiar. Recently, it's been a little bit in the news, particularly the BHP takeover of Oz, the bid for Oz Minerals by BHP, and some of this area, was put in the spotlight. Make no mistake, this is a really exciting province for exploring for nickel and copper. You cannot underestimate the value of long life, large scale nickel and copper projects in a first world jurisdiction. And that's what attracts, big companies like BHP. And we just happen to be along strike of that. Same belt of rocks running into our project area. Very early stage of exploration. The work that I'm talking about is more on the Duchess prospect. Sorry, I'll just go back. That's on the western side of the project area, but we're also planning to move onto that One Tree Hill side in this upcoming program. So we've been able to generate the drill results from this aircore program are still to come. We did bottom hole results, which is a sort of a glorified soil sample, if you like. Shows that we've got an interesting sort of mineralization system going on there, but we're waiting to see what the rest of the drill holes come back with. So we'll be focusing on that as well as on the other side of the One Tree Hill side, as we call it, which is where we're looking for nickel copper sort of systems. And so that's that'll be the focus for our program. That'll last about 4 weeks, and then that will nicely transition us into work going back out to Yarrawinda. And so that's why it's an exciting time for shareholders. Very busy 6 months ahead. Not only are we going to be active in the field, but we're still getting drill results back from our previous program. There's some of the peripheral holes from Yarrawinda still outstanding, and we also have results from our Mount Squires project still to come, as well as generating more data in what I think is obviously a breakthrough discovery in the West Yilgarn. So Chrissy, I think you would agree that that is a fantastic time for Caspin. Yes? I'll leave it there.
So the trick is that I'm not allowed to speak for about 5 seconds after you finish speaking, because what we're doing up the back is we're cutting up all the presentations. So I look like I'm a bit rude at the end, or I'm trying to be standoffish at the start. It's because we're trying to give you a bit of space so that our editors can edit your bits and pieces.
Oh,
So that's
Shane's pretty good.
That's why I'm nodding.
he can
Let's tell me if you say anything, because I can't reply. But thank you. Thank you very much. And go out and have a look at Caspin. Guys, we're going to have an afternoon tea break and back here in half an hour. At the very end of today, we've got a really interesting discussion from a presenter about new age technology, battery minerals, etc. So stay for that one. And after that, we've got some drinks too. So if you don't want to jump straight into peak hour traffic and go home, or jump on the train, however you're getting home, we've got some drinks here on Stewie as well. So please